When you look at MindMed in 6 months or 12 months, you'll see an organization that stands out as the most compelling drug development pipeline in the psychedelic space, that both is not being oversold as by having too many programs that can't feasibly be done as some have, and being a one-trick pony as some others. So we're excited about hitting that sweet spot and building the organization to match and build that.
My next guest is Robert Barrow. He's the CEO of Mind Medicine Inc., trades on NASDAQ under the symbol MMED. Rob, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Inquiring minds want to know, first and foremost, what catalyzed the change in management at MindMed?
Yeah, it's been a really exciting time for us. JR's departure certainly was a change for the organization, but really, he and I had several discussions about the future direction, and I think hitting the milestone of moving us onto the NASDAQ and a lot of the initial successes we've had with investors and building the team, JR just realized it was time for the next leg of the journey, and we were excited to move in this direction together. So he's certainly it's a new day for us as an organization, and we're excited to take that next step.
Sure, you bet. Okay, so investors want to know, who's Rob Barrow? What's your story?
Yeah, so I'm a drug developer through and through. I have an interesting, long, mixed background. I was a college golfer and moved into the pharma world thereafter, and spent a long time working on drugs in a variety of indications for a variety of organizations, and taking them from really off the shelf new discovery through into late stage development. And so I got involved in the psychedelic area, working for a company called USONA Institute based in Madison, Wisconsin, working on psilocybin. I was very fortunate to get to know a lot of the top researchers in the field, and ultimately was able to get a breakthrough therapy designation for that program and move the clinical development program forward and launch a phase 2 trial of psilocybin and MDD. So I've got a track record as a drug developer, as a pharmacologist, and that's really what drives me and the team we're building is a team of expert drug developers. I think we stand out in that way. We've really built a pharmaceutical company that's going to be competitive outside of just the psychedelic landscape, but that has the skill set and the knowledge and the expertise to really take these exciting new therapies across the finish line. Sure.
So then, has anything changed in the basic strategy for the company since you've taken over?
I would say not in any substantial way. One of the really great things about the time I joined MindMed, I've been working with MindMed in some capacity for about a year, and then came on as the Chief Development Officer beginning of 2021. And really, the strategy was set in collaboration with myself, with JR, with Dan Carlin, and Miri Halpern-Wernley. So this, aside from JR's departure, the team that's here now, the team that's leading this, and myself in particular, we're key in setting the strategy forward and launching the programs we have, and ultimately the next generation of programs we want to be looking at in the next coming years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what is the next generation of programs look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. We want everyone to stay tuned and follow MindMed to see. We haven't made any announcements about that yet, but we're excited about what's coming. And I think one of the really core features of MindMed, again, is that we're developing this and building a pharmaceutical company. In order to do that, you need a pipeline. But one of the great things about us is that we are largely agnostic to whether a drug makes you hallucinate or not. And so we're thinking about second generation, third generation molecules, novel treatment paradigms, ways to really approach this as a sophisticated drug company, not as someone who's just tied to what has historically been done from psychedelic substances more anecdotally. So I can't say too much specifically, but we're very excited about the next months and years to come, and certainly we'll make some big announcements when we're ready.
Sure. Okay, so in July, you announced the initiation of a phase 1 clinical trial for intravenous DMT. Is it still too soon to comment at all on what the progress of that is or what the effect is on patients?
Yeah, it's a little too early for that. It's a study we run in collaboration with our partners at University Hospital Basel, and one that we're excited for the readout for. It's going to move fairly quickly as a phase 1 study. They've been working hard on that study already, but it's a little too premature to say anything about the effects. But again, as soon as data comes available and we make progress with completing that study, we'll certainly make announcements and publications around what we find. We're excited about a new approach for a short-acting psychedelic molecule that could have, enormous long-term potential as an asset in our pipeline potentially, or at a bare minimum to inform some key aspects of the pharmacology and pharmacokinetics of DMT.
Sure. Okay, then, so from an investor's perspective, why should I be compelled to buy the stock in the company right now? Like, what's going to catalyze Milestones in the next 12 months?
Well, as I say, we have a number of exciting new initiatives, early stage development activities, later stage development activities that we're focusing on. I think everyone should pay close attention to what's happening in the broader sector over the next several months, but in particular for MindMed. And I think when we look at the landscape and the leadership pack, we've seen a lot of noise made by some other companies. And we've really put our heads down and want to be building the organization and taking the next step of this organization to set ourselves up for long-term value creation and success, even if that means making less of a short-term splash or bump in the stock price from day to day. So the reason to buy MindMed, the reason to get behind our mission is that we are building this for the long term. We've, again, got the team, the assets, and the approach and the vision ultimately for how we're going to get all of these programs across the finish line. And I think when you look at MindMed in 6 months or 12 months, you'll see an organization that stands out as the most compelling drug development pipeline in the psychedelic space, that both is not being oversold as by having too many programs that can't feasibly be done as some have, and being a one-trick pony as some others. So we're excited about hitting that sweet spot and building the organization to match and build that.
Sure. Okay, so what catalysts in the broader industry of psychedelics globally do you see coming down the pike that ultimately excite you?
Yeah, we're certainly excited to see the readout from Compass's phase 2 study of psilocybin and treatment-resistant depression. Treatment-resistant depression is a very difficult condition to treat, and so this will be the first readout from a industry-sponsored commercial clinical trial. And we know from the literature and from other antidepressants that effect sizes in commercial studies can be smaller than those in the initial academic studies. And so we're excited to see that, to really have the strongest evidence to date about the path forward and in treating depression in particular. We're also excited about a number of our studies and launching our phase 2 programs for 18MC and for LSD, and again for bringing additional molecules potentially into our pipeline over the next months and years. We think that, I think it was maybe Buffett who said, when the tide goes out, you'll see who's wearing swim trunks. And I think that we're hitting a point where there's been so many new emergence in the field, and it's going to become apparent in the next several months and years, just who are the leaders in the pack, who's serious about taking this, and who's really building a company for the long term and long-term value creation. And we think certainly that's MindMed as the leader in that area. Sure.
I'm curious as to how you perceive the future competitive landscape. I mean, if psychedelics are going to become a mainstream therapy for mental health issues, what's to stop the well-established healthcare systems from sort of eating your lunch, cutting your grass, taking over the space because they've already got the patient base?
Well, I think, again, that's something that we really don't shy away from, and that's unique about MindMed. I think a lot of the stories that get told about psychedelics is that we need to burn down the mental health care system and rebuild it just to match a new set of molecules. That's not either realistic or quite frankly feasible. What we want to do in our approach is less about building MindMed specific treatment centers or trying to patent some special sauce of therapy, but to lean into the current healthcare systems that exist. It's not perfect. We know that. We think we can improve on it and provide both drug tools and digital health tools that will enable broader adoption and accessibility and ultimately scalability of these therapies when we do ultimately get them approved. But I would only answer your question to say, we're not going to try to shy away from the mental health care system that exists. We simply want to improve on it and provide tools that really allow psychedelics to become mainstream. It will not become mainstream if it's reliant on building a special clinic and recreating the mental health care and the healthcare system in this country. Just isn't going to happen, so we don't want to go that direction.
Okay, so then MindMed's focused on then ultimately sort of the traditional molecule development under the FDA sort of framework, phase 1, phase 2, 3 trials, ultimately receiving a license and licensing a molecule to the healthcare industry as it exists.
That's correct. I mean, that's really the path forward for new therapies. And the FDA process, we know it well. We have a team of developers who know this better than anyone in the field. And we know how to get it through. We know what precedents exist. We know what is frankly feasible. And in many instances, what one may wish to see happen or what would be good for an ideal world doesn't fit into the current landscape, doesn't fit into a regulatory framework that can actually be successfly done and completed and bring new therapies to market. And I also think we don't want to lose sight of the fact that you look at those who historically have been accessing and excited about psychedelics, and it's great that those individuals were early funders and adopters of psychedelics in the broader world. But we don't want to forget that these therapies, anxiety, depression, any of the therapies, certainly use disorders, no socioeconomic bounds. And we don't want this to be rolled out in a way that is only accessible to the top 0.001%, that is only accessible to those, frankly, who already, in many instances, go out and pursue underground treatment on their own. So we're taking, again, a broader view and leaning into that current landscape and improving on it so that everyone who needs the therapies can access it, and that we can ultimately be successful both commercially and in having a huge public health impact. That's our vision at MindMed.
That's great, Rob. It's a great introduction to yourself and an update on the company, and I appreciate your time. We'll come back to you soon. Thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
You bet. Bye for now.